This has always been a place for spirited conversation, but to make sure that both sides get heard. And I thank Trent Luce for coming on because Trent's probably not going to send me a Christmas card, and maybe I won't send him a Christmas card. So we're not doing the kumbaya, but hopefully you saw that you can have disagreements in a civil way. I'm sitting here and I dug up the fact, and we'll show this another day on a graphic, that Trent and Kelly Luce in the hog and pig business received a $20,833 PPP loan from Farm Credit Services of America. Now, that everybody knows PPP loans didn't have to and weren't paid back. If he paid it back, then you know what? I'll admit he paid it back. But he did take a PPP loan, and we will pull up the information from Kevin Kramer in regards to doing the high five on one side, saying I brought home the federal bacon, and on the other side going down to Nebraska and saying, I don't believe in federal government going into farms. But we'll get to that another day. I asked Jim Shaw to come in. Now, Jim writes for Forum Communications, a longtime journalist, longtime commentator. Now, Jim raised an issue that should get your attention. What he said, and I'll let him speak to it, is that abortion, after the Supreme Court ruling, that abortion should be put on the ballot in North Dakota to see if North Dakotans want to take away that right of a family or of a woman. Jim was good enough to come in. Jim, good to have you back coming down the road with us.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
What's the premise of your article? Why did you write it?
Well, it appears that the Supreme Court is going to overrule Roe versus Wade and make abortion up to each and every state. So we already know in North Dakota that if that happens, abortion will become illegal because of the trigger law that the legislature passed in 2007. But if it's up to the state, then let's do it the pure way. Let's put it on the ballot. That means getting about 31,000 signatures and letting every North Dakota have a chance to weigh in on whether or not they think abortion should be legal at some early point of a pregnancy. And I believe that if North Dakotans have the chance to vote on it, it would pass. I believe even in conservative old North Dakota, the majority of people in the state believe that abortion should be allowed in early stages of pregnancy.
So not at any stage of the pregnancy,
no.
Just the early stages of the pregnancy.
Right.
And why do you believe that?
Well, we've seen it. There have been several other ballot measures where, surprisingly, the people of North Dakota took the more socially moderate position as opposed to the legislature. Medical marijuana is a great example. The legislature just went absolutely, no, we're not going to pass this. When it went on the ballot in North Dakota, 64% of the people voted to legalize medical marijuana. The biggest indicator was the measure number one, the personhood measure, 2014, which basically was an anti-abortion measure saying there should be no abortions. Basically, they talked about the sanctity of life, but it was really about saying we don't want abortion in the state. And that measure was trounced. Again, 64% voted against it. Only 36% voted yes. So that tells me there's a lot of people out there who really believe it should be legal. Beyond the fact that, let's face it, if this does not go on the ballot, abortion will be illegal in this state for decades, maybe forever, because the legislature isn't going to change it. And the legislature, for at least the next 50 years, is going to be controlled by Republicans with a Republican governor, because it would take Democrats to control both chambers and a Democratic governor to make abortion legal. Don't hold your breath that you're ever going to see that in your lifetime. But I've always believed in putting measures on the ballot. That, to me, is true democracy. Let's see how North Dakotans really feel on this issue.
So you're saying when they get the privacy of pulling that curtain, and they don't have to talk to their neighbor, or don't have to talk to their minister or their priest about it, when they just get the privacy of pulling that curtain, that they will keep a woman's right to choose up to a certain level.
Absolutely. I believe that there are many people, I'm not saying the majority of people who are anti-abortion, but there are many people who publicly state that they are against abortion, but privately are in favor of it, and that's the way they will vote. There are people in the back of their minds who are thinking, you know, what happens if my daughter or my wife or my girlfriend or my mistress gets pregnant? I want to have that option of an abortion. I don't want to have that person be forced to have a baby. They'll never say it publicly, but once they go to the privacy of that voting booth, that's how they will vote.
Now, to do this, it's going to take 30+ thousand signatures.
Right.
And you're saying once you get in the privacy of that booth, that voting booth, that they're going to be able to speak what they really believe. That's your premise.
Right.
If you sign that, you've said what you really believe. And your name is there. It's in the Secretary of State's office. So what is the difference between signing the petition to get on the ballot versus getting into that booth, pulling the curtain and voting?
And you make a good point. There are some people who will not sign that petition because they don't want to be publicly identified as supporting it, but would vote yes. So it will be a little more challenging to get those signatures. But I believe that they can still easily get the signatures. If it's well organized and well financed, they will get the signatures with no problem.
Okay, let's talk about this. Because in North Dakota, as you pointed out, very conservative state, legislatively, but socially liberal. I mean, you bring up medical marijuana, for example. There's going to be another ballot measure, if they get the signatures, which I think they will, to make recreational marijuana legal in this state. And so the way, by the very admission, Representative Rubio out of Minot came on this show and put a bill forward that he's going to introduce that severely limits but makes recreational marijuana legal, but it's a way of acknowledging it's going to pass and squeezing it down. And so even the conservative legislature acknowledges the viewpoint of some issues that they don't agree with. And to me, that's an example, Jim.
Well, that's a good example. And I think if they get the signatures, that's going to be very close. But it has a legitimate chance of passage. I'm talking about recreational marijuana. But it's nice to see the legislature, at least a few of them, recognize what the people want versus what their fellow legislators want, because oftentimes there's a huge discrepancy on that front.
When we come back, we're going to talk about 50 years of what the law is in the United States of America. 50 years, where people come to quietly know that it's legal, never want to use it, but some have. And because of that, I believe, Jim, most of us who know someone in our life that might have had an abortion. And so really what the Supreme Court is doing is turning that individual into a criminal. Agreed?
Oh, absolutely.
And so if they're turning that person into a criminal, I think there's a lot of people out there after 50 years that don't see those individuals as criminals.
Right. Well, what happens when a woman has a miscarriage? Is she going to be investigated by the local police to see if it was, in fact, a miscarriage? She's already traumatized, and now she's under a police investigation to make sure it wasn't an abortion.
We're going to continue our conversation with Jim Shaw. He's a columnist with the Fargo Forum, and he believes that if there gets to be enough signatures on the ballot, that North Dakotans will support a measure in the Constitution that retains the right for women to have an abortion. He believes that. Jim, I don't know if you're right or wrong. To me, the biggest hurdle is getting those signatures. I don't think it's going to be easy.
I think it will be easy. I think even setting aside those who don't want to publicly identify with it, there are many, many pro-choice people in North Dakota, and this has really stirred them up, and they will absolutely get the signatures on this.
So let's talk about what happens now. If it stays the same, what happens now? Because there is all this talk about, for example, somebody is in the central, I don't want to say a town's name and include the town's name in the conversation we're having, but somebody in central North Dakota says, get in the pickup, we're driving over to Minnesota, we're going to end this pregnancy. You're 14 years old, you've been raped. I mean, you can use excuse, or I shouldn't say excuse, but reason, valid reason after reason, but get in the pickup, we're going to go. And there's talk about how law enforcement could stop that. Could you see this ruling go as far as doing that?
I could see the legislature going in that direction because they are that ultra-conservative. That would be frightening. Another thing to consider is, yes, now, if and when Roe versus Wade is overturned in the next month or so, abortion will be legal in the state of Minnesota. But that can always change. The legislature of Minnesota could become controlled by Republicans. There could be a Republican governor. We know that will happen. It might not be in 2 years or 4 years, but at some point, these things are cyclical. At some point, Republicans will control the government in Minnesota, and they could make abortion illegal, which is why, to go back to what I wrote about, I think it's imperative that this issue be put on the ballot in North Dakota, because if you're counting on Minnesota, abortion is not for sure always going to be available there.
I want to talk about what happened in the interview before you. I was visiting with a man named Trent Luce, and Trent is on this very network. Very conservative, ran for lieutenant governor on the ballot in Nebraska, does a regional radio show and some TV. And I mean, Trent is someone that's out there in front of the public a lot. And we were talking about federal subsidies. And we were talking about farmers. We were talking about federal crop insurance. We were talking about PPP, which I will prove another day here on down the road that he did, in fact, take PPP money, but that's an aside. The one thing that instantly he said is there should be no federal money for bing, bang, boom. And one of the groups he said, which is a connect word, it's a buzzword, is welfare mothers. Welfare mothers. So the very same people that are going to force a woman to bring a child into this world instantly are the ones that say, no money for welfare mothers, no federal money. Do you find that hypocritical?
Of course it's hypocritical. It reminds me of Barney Frank's famous comment when he said, many people against abortion believe that life begins at conception and ends at birth. In other words, all right, you have to have the baby. After that, not our problem. Good luck to you.
Right.
We're not going to help you. So one would hope that, and there are people who sincerely are part of the pro-life movement and believe in the welfare of the mother and the child and believe that that child should be assisted. Make it happen. Put your money where your mouth is, because it's not going to work if you force a lot of people to have abortions and then do nothing to help the mother and that new child after they're born, when the mother clearly did not want that child to begin with.
Do you feel the Supreme Court justices that were placed on the Supreme Court by President Trump, Justice Kavanaugh, for example, perjured himself from his hearing when he talked about the issue of Roe v. Wade?
Yes, I think 4 of them lied. I think Alito lied, Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, and Amy Coney Barrett. They all gave the cliche answer that it's settled law, the implication being that Roe versus Wade will stay in place permanently. And they said that to get confirmed, but they lied. They knew once they got on, they were going to try to get rid of it as soon as possible.
In the minute they have left, what do you think this does to the government of the United States in regards to the politicalization of the Supreme Court, where you can lie to get on the court?
It'll do nothing. We've accepted it. That's a reality. We've seen a Senate Majority Leader block a nominee because he was nominated by the president of the other party. So appointments have become more political. It used to be routine, and now it's a circus, and it's an embarrassment. We saw what happened with the last one. What's a woman? Do you believe in racist babies? What does that have to do with being a justice of the Supreme Court? It's a real embarrassment how we go about choosing and selecting Supreme Court justices now.
Jim, always good to talk to you. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
joining us.